Hi guys, this is Marvin from shopsadapage.com, and today we are going to do an unboxing review of the Geek GK61 60% mechanical keyboard from Banggood.com. Now what's interesting about this is that it uses optical switch and is hot-swappable, so we're going to talk about the pros and cons in this video as well as everything you need to know about this keyboard. So with that being said, let's get into it. So right here I have the box for the GK61 60% keyboard. It's fairly standard for a budget keyboard with their logo at the center here. So let's see what comes in the package. Inside the box we have the keyboard itself protected by a plastic cover rather than the foam sleeve that we usually see. Inside the box we also have the instruction manual in both Chinese and English. We also have a very nice braided cable here with gold-plated USB Type-C to Type-A connector. It also has a built-in Velcro strap for cable management, which I appreciate especially at its price point. We also have here the standard keycap puller, but unfortunately I don't have the key switch puller, so I just made one myself using a tweezer, and it actually works like a charm. Now let's check out the GK61 60% keyboard. Again, it is nicely protected by this plastic, although I would still prefer the usual foam sleeve. At first touch, this keyboard looks very nice and the look has a different character to it compared to most 60% keyboards out there. The layout is pretty standard using the ANSI layout. So replacing the keycaps on this keyboard is very easy, especially after you're able to memorize the layers and can get rid of the legends that would improve the overall look of the keyboard. It has a decent weight to it of around 546 grams, allowing it to be more portable. It also doesn't flex much thanks to its metal back plating partnered with the hard plastic housing. Flipping it on its side, we can see that it is slightly angled for a more ergonomic form factor with a kinda interesting glossy finish at the bottom. This keyboard uses the standard OEM profile, but the default keycaps have this glossy finish on its side, complementing the glossy finish on the body. The glossy finish spans around the keycaps, giving the keyboard a different character than we typically see. At the bottom, we have 4 rubber feet and the usual technical information like serial number, power rating, certifications, and manufacturing location. Looking closer, as you can see, it has a different visual vibe with the glossy finish here and on the keycaps. You just have to keep it clean to maintain its aesthetics. It looks cool when it's clean, but I'm pretty sure this could easily become nasty in dusty and humid environments like what we have here in the studio. Now in terms of the layout, like I said, it uses the ANSI standard, but since this is a 60% keyboard, we lose the numpad as well as the dedicated arrow keys. Instead, we have it on a different layer alongside the 9 special keys here and the function keys here up top. With regards to the font used, it is similar to the one we usually see on cheap custom keycaps, but with additional legends for the layers. The function button is located at the lower right corner here to toggle the different layers. I guess we'll just have to get used to using our pinky finger for this. And lastly, in terms of design, it has a pretty slim bezel around it, adding to the overall small form factor. Moving on, let's talk about the different lighting effects. You can lower the brightness by pressing Fn plus P until it blinks, telling you that it's the maximum setting. You can also increase the brightness by pressing Fn plus left bracket. You can also adjust the speed of the animation by pressing Fn plus semicolon and Fn plus apostrophe. You can turn off the LED illumination by pressing Fn plus backspace. Now, this keyboard actually has 2 sets of lighting modes. One is called the logic lights, which are mostly dynamic effects and can be toggled by pressing Fn plus right bracket. The other mode is called code lights, which are reactive, that you can toggle by pressing Fn plus backward slash. This mode includes the audio sync that takes advantage of the built-in microphone. Yes, you heard it right guys, this keyboard actually has a microphone. You can also toggle the onboard settings by pressing Fn plus Q, which is for online mode. We will talk more about that later. And then Fn plus W to R for the different preset layers that you can use in offline mode or when the keyboard is not using the software. And lastly, of course, you can lock the Windows key by pressing Fn plus Windows key to prevent start menu from popping up while gaming. Now here's how the lighting modes look when all the lights in the room are turned off so that you can have an idea how bright the LEDs are. Speaking of LEDs, let's talk about it more closely. The Geek GK61 has true RGB lighting, which means each LED is capable of up to 16.8 million colors, and that the transition between animations is very smooth, as you can see here. Looking closer, we can see that this keyboard uses SMD or surface-mounted LEDs. And looking even closer, we can clearly distinguish the three filaments for the red, green, and blue colors. That combines up to 16.8 million colors. Now, the switch itself has this little magnifying glass-like material that magnifies the light and makes it even brighter. But it has one downside, which I will show you later in this video. Now, let's talk about the switch, which is one of the unique features of this keyboard. Under the hood, it has Optical Gateron reds, which is basically the same as the normal Gateron red, but with a different design. Gateron red has an actuation distance of 2.0mm, bottom out distance of 4.0mm, and an actuation force of 45 grams. Here's a closer look at the magnifying part of the switch that I've mentioned earlier. This being an optical switch, it doesn't have the usual metal prongs that connect to the PCB. Instead, it has the shaft, which is part of the stem to block the light in between the sensors on the PCB. Now, the advantages of optical switch are it is known to have faster response times, better durability, and easily replaceable due to the fact that it isn't soldered to the PCB. This keyboard is also IP68 waterproof, at least they claim it is, and the switch being optical could certainly help with that. Now, when it comes to the actual feel of the Optical Gateron red, it feels really smooth as expected with the Gateron switch, and since it only requires little force to actuate at 45 grams, I think it is suitable for fast typists with touch typing skills. As long as you're pretty accurate with typing, you can take advantage of this switch for faster productivity. It is also relatively silent due to its linear nature. But just in case the switch you chose didn't actually match your personal preference, you can easily swap it with other Optical Gateron switches like black, brown, and blue. Here's a quick comparison between an Optical Gateron red switch and the original Cherry MX red. As you can see, the Cherry MX has two metal prongs while the Optical Gateron only has the center shaft. Now, here are some downsides of the Optical Gateron switch, at least for this particular board. Since the switch is not soldered directly to the PCB, it is noticeably wobbly, as you can see here. It is also very easy to remove, and sometimes it comes off along with a keycap if the keycap is still a little bit tight out of the box. Now, if you've watched my previous keyboard reviews, you might have noticed that I love comparing switches, not only the ones I'm currently reviewing but on my other keyboards as well. So now we're going to compare the Optical Gateron red with the Zorro black switch on my Aegis AK33, and with the Cherry MX red and Cherry MX black. As per my testing, the Optical Gateron red is lighter and significantly smoother than the Zorro black, which is one of the more cheaper clones of the Cherry MX black. Now, comparing the Optical Gateron red to the Cherry MX red, they're basically the same in terms of the actuation force, but since the Optical Gateron red is smoother, it feels a tad lighter, at least for how I feel it here. You will not notice the difference if you just quickly press the switch. You'll feel the difference when you press the switch lightly around the actuation point. The same goes with the comparison between the Optical Gateron red and the Cherry MX black. The Gateron red is lighter and smoother, but in terms of audible sound when being pressed, the Cherry MX linear switches seems to be more silent. Alright guys, before we head to the typing test, let's discuss about the keycaps. The keycaps are made of ABS plastic with two different textures. The top has the usual rough texture while the sides have this very shiny and glossy finish. It is double shot, which means it has this translucent plastic underneath it for the legends and to allow the illumination to pass through. This will also allow the legends to not fade that easily over time. Now finally, here's some typing tests and comparison so that you can have an idea how the Optical Gateron red sounds in comparison with my other linear and tactile keyboards. And here are some size comparisons for you guys. When it comes to stabilizers, the GK61 has pretty decent ones. It's not the best, but I've seen worse than this. It doesn't have much rattle even on the spacebar. As I've mentioned earlier, this keyboard has a built-in microphone that can be used with the music sync, either using the onboard code lights or with the help of the software. Later, I will show you guys how to do that. Moving on, let's discuss about the different layers. This is vital if this is your first time transitioning to a 60% layout. On the upper right side, we have the lighting effects control keys that I've shown you earlier. And then we have the 9 special keys, also known as the nav cluster, and then the arrow keys here. All of these layers can be triggered by using the function key, and I think it's a pretty decent location if you can train your pinky fingers to use it along with the layers. There's a ton of 60% keyboards out there and their implementation of layers and functions varies, but I think the GK61 has a pretty decent implementation right here. Now let's move on to the performance of this keyboard. In terms of typing experience, the Optical Gateron Red is very light, allowing you to easily actuate the keys. This is perfect for fast typists with touch typing skills. Personally, it is too light for my liking. I feel like I make mistakes more often with red than with a brown or black switch. For comparison, the Optical Gateron Red only requires 45 grams of actuation force, 55 grams for Optical Gateron Brown, and 60 grams for Optical Gateron Black. So if you're like me who isn't very good at typing, you might want to try a different switch first, like black if you want linear, brown if you want tactile, and blue if you want accurate typing with the help of the very audible click and tactile feedback. With regards to the keys being a little bit wobbly, I find that it is not that of a big deal when it comes to the overall typing experience. There might be a slight difference in feel compared to a keyboard with a normal switch, but not so much that it takes away from the overall good experience. Now when it comes to gaming performance, I didn't find the light actuation force of the red switch as an issue. In fact, it is actually satisfying to use for gaming to easily actuate the keys for movements, changing weapons, reloading, and the like. And since this keyboard only operates in wired mode, you are assured that the NKRO or NK rollover is always working. This means you can press multiple keys at the same time without conflicts. And I was able to verify that here. As you can see, I am pressing multiple keys at the same time and they are all being registered without missing any. Moving on to the software, which I think is my least favorite part of this keyboard. It's a little bit confusing at first. To be honest, I've seen better software from other similarly priced keyboards before. But if you're really into customizing your keyboard, especially with the lighting effects, shortcuts, and macros, then you have to spend a little more time tinkering around this. But once you're able to figure out what you need, then you're all set. It's really confusing, so I'll try to explain as best as I can right here. So we have two modes, the driver mode, which gives you more customization, including the ability to create a shortcut and launch things like applications and videos, which I think is pretty cool and can be useful in some cases. You'll also have more options in terms of the lighting effects, especially with the music sync feature. As you can see, I've set the system backlight to music volume 2, which will react alongside the music being played. Right now, the music is paused, so the keyboard doesn't have a backlight. And when I press play, the keyboard will start to react and sync with the beat. You can also sync the keyboard with the music using the built-in microphone, but it will detect and react to everything including the background noise in your environment. Now we also have the onboard settings, which will obviously take advantage of the onboard memory this keyboard has. You'll still have all the basic customizations minus some perky ones such as the system music sync. But you'll be able to toggle these settings even without the software, like for example if you bring the keyboard along with you and connect it to a different computer. Aside from that, you also have the option to record your own macros here, but I figured it is also a little bit confusing, so I didn't actually bother with this. Another thing is that you can actually create your own lighting effects and save it as a preset. I tried it for a while but I cannot seem to figure it out, so I didn't also bother with it too much. Other than that, you have the basic customization like changing the function of a single key to another key, numpad, media, mouse function, system functions, and disabling the key. Overall, the software is still useful providing that you are willing to allow some time to figure things out. And if all else fail, just reset the software to factory settings and just leave it as is. And lastly, before we end this video, I just noticed something odd with the LED illumination. The RGB lighting on some colors has some gradient on it, like for example for color orange, it has a red and yellow gradient. After some close inspection, I found out that the reason is the magnifying glass on the Optical Gateron switch. It somehow magnifies the color differently, resulting to some gradient colors. Thankfully, it only affects few colors in between primary colors, so red, blue, green, and other colors don't have this gradient effect. Alright guys, so it may seem a handful understanding everything I said on this video, But to conclude, if you're looking for a decent budget hot-swappable keyboard that has an optical switch, then this is a very good option. The build quality is decent, the design with the glossy sides is subject for personal preference, but I think it looks cool when it's clean. The layout is standard and the layer implementation is functional and can be learned in a short period of time. The Optical Gateron switch is very smooth and satisfying. You just have to pick the right color for your preference since it is available in blue, brown, and the red switch that we have right here. The only downside that I don't like about this keyboard is the software. I think it is not very intuitive and it requires more time to get the hang of. But if you don't rely on software, then you're all set. And there you have it guys, thank you for watching. Make sure to check the full article link below. Huge thanks to Banggood.com for sending this in and for their continued support on my channel. Without them, this wouldn't be possible and they're actually allowing me to review their products honestly and without restrictions, and I think that's pretty awesome. You can get this from their official store, link below, and you can also use my code MARVIN3 for additional 10% off upon your purchase. We have more mechanical keyboard reviews coming up in the future, so make sure to subscribe so you won't miss out. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you like this, and see you next time. Have a great day.